Stop trading. Start watching history. There is a terrifying, repetitive pattern that governs every major financial collapse and every global war. This pattern is not an accident. It is a blueprint, and it confirms the exact date of the next great collapse. They told you that World War I was triggered by an assassination. They lied. It was triggered by debt. They told you the 2008 crisis was caused by bad mortgages. They lied. It was caused by a calculated liquidity shift. History is the biggest fraud they commit. This video exposes the war banking pattern, the 80-year cycle of war, debt, and economic seizure orchestrated by three hidden banks you have never heard of. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Iraq. They all followed the pattern. And the pattern confirms that 2025 is the final date for the complete seizure of your wealth. You have 20 minutes to learn the rules of this devastating game. We must expose the war banking pattern. This is the truth that every central banker keeps locked in their private vault. Every 80 years, the global banking system orchestrates a synchronized event of war and economic seizure. The purpose is always the same: to transition from an old, unsustainable debt system to a new one, consolidating power and wealth at the top. The pattern is the mechanism of power transfer. The core principle of the pattern is simple. Debt cannot be repaid, so it must be erased through chaos. The entire system is designed to reach a critical debt limit, and then a planned conflict, a war, a financial seizure, or a political crash is initiated to wipe the slate clean. This destruction guarantees that the elite can buy up assets at fire sale prices, resetting the game in their favor. This is the definition of the war banking pattern. It is not morality. It is mathematics. Let us examine the great historical lie they perpetuate. You have been taught that economic collapse is a random event, caused by unforeseen market factors. This is the greatest deception. The truth lies in the cycle. The war banking pattern dictates that debt accumulation, followed by political distraction, leads directly to economic seizure. Take the greatest lie. The trigger of World War I, you were told it was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. The truth? It was the terminal stage of massive, unpayable European sovereign debt. The assassination provided the political justification needed to mobilize, allowing governments to effectively nationalize private gold and seize control of critical industries, all while using the chaos of war to wipe the ledgers clean. The debt preceded the bullet. Always. Take the crisis they call random. The 2008 financial crash. They blame subprime mortgages. The lie. The crash was a calculated liquidity shift. The banks were not surprised. They had insured themselves against the inevitable failure and used the crisis to consolidate massive wealth. The fear generated by the crash allowed them to pass legislation that fundamentally protected the biggest financial institutions while punishing the retail investor. The crash was the controlled demolition of excess leverage. The pattern confirms we are now in the final stage of the final cycle. The global debt today dwarfs the 1930s. The political distractions are synchronized globally. The final step is the 2025 liquidity seizure. This seizure is mathematically guaranteed because the debt is now too large for even central banks to manage without total systemic collapse. They must choose between two outcomes: hyperinflation or planned strategic seizure. They have chosen the seizure. In the next part, we will expose the three specific, shadowy institutions that created this pattern and who are actively managing the final collapse. The fraud is clear. The collapse is a calculated pattern. But who are the individuals and institutions actively pulling the strings? It is not the smiling politicians you see on television. It is the hidden empire. 3. Financial entities that control more wealth and power than most sovereign nations combined. These are the institutions that guarantee the war banking pattern succeeds. Bank 1, the Bank for International Settlements, BIS. They are the single most powerful and least understood bank in the world. The BIS, based in Basel, Switzerland, is the central bank for the world's central banks. They operate above the law, above political scrutiny, and they dictate the global financial rules. Every major global financial policy, from capital requirements, known as Basel III, to the movement of national gold reserves, is coordinated through the BIS. They are the architects of the collapse. They ensure that every central bank, the Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, the Bank of England, moves in lockstep towards the final synchronized seizure. The BIS is the key because it is the only place where the global elite can coordinate the synchronized destruction of fiat currencies without public oversight. Bank 2. The Vanguard Group. You may think of Vanguard as a simple mutual fund company, but that is the greatest deception. Vanguard is a multi-trillion, dollar behemoth that is technically owned by its own funds. This complex structure makes it practically impossible to audit or control. Vanguard holds controlling stakes in almost every major corporation and media company in the United States and globally. They control the narrative. They control the flow of information. They are the financial enforcers of the pattern, ensuring corporate compliance and quiet asset acquisition during the chaos. When the collapse hits, Vanguard is positioned to acquire liquidated assets at massive discounts, fulfilling the pattern's requirement for ultimate wealth transfer. Bank 3. The BlackRock Group. This is the shadow brain of the hidden empire. BlackRock manages trillions of dollars for governments, pension funds, and sovereign wealth funds. Their proprietary risk management software, Aladdin, effectively monitors and predicts the failure points of the entire global financial system. BlackRock knows exactly where the market weaknesses are and where the final asset transfers must occur. They are the ultimate information broker and system analyst for the elite. By controlling the debt instruments and the underlying assets of governments globally, BlackRock holds the ultimate leverage to dictate the terms of the 2025 Liquidity Seizure. They are the beneficiaries of the systemic debt failure. These three institutions do not compete. They collaborate. They are the single entity that guarantees the war banking pattern succeeds. They engineered the debt that is now terminal. They will profit from the conflict that is coming, and they will seize the assets during the final collapse. We must now examine the timeline of their success, specifically focusing on how they used the last major crisis, the 1970s, to set the stage for the final act, and the definitive signal that the US dollar is now entering the collapse phase. We have exposed the perpetrators, the BIS, Vanguard, and BlackRock. Now we must track their final signal. The definitive proof that the war banking pattern has entered its terminal phase is the synchronized, silent accumulation of gold and silver. The US dollar is backed by nothing but debt and global faith. The pattern dictates that before a major financial reset, the controllers must secretly acquire the only asset that holds true value: physical precious metals. This is not about investment. This is about ensuring the elite's wealth against the collapse they themselves engineered. The biggest fraud being perpetrated right now is the manipulation of the gold and silver paper markets. They use massive short selling in the futures market to artificially suppress the price of physical metals. They are terrified of the true price being reflected in the market, because a high gold price signals the market's complete loss of faith in the US dollar and the fiat system. They are holding down the price so they can continue to accumulate quietly. This price suppression is the greatest indicator of the coming dollar destruction. The BIS, which coordinates global central banks, has quietly implemented Basel III rules. While these rules seem complex, the underlying function is to make it incredibly expensive for commercial banks to hold unallocated paper gold. This rule forces the movement of physical gold back into the hands of central banks. They are withdrawing the physical gold from the retail market right before the collapse. This is the ultimate insider move. And what about silver? Silver is the ultimate leverage play in the war banking pattern. Silver is not just a monetary metal. It is the most critical industrial metal on Earth, essential for solar, electric vehicles, and future technology. They are suppressing the price of silver even more aggressively than gold because they know that when the pattern breaks, silver's price will explode far higher than gold's due to its industrial demand and limited supply. They are deliberately keeping the price low to acquire vast amounts of this critical resource before the reset. The pattern is clear: massive debt, engineered suppression of gold and silver, and quiet accumulation by the hidden empire. The entire purpose of this dollar destruction is to pave the way for a new, digitally controlled system where the collapse is total and the control is absolute. In the next part, we will expose the final piece of the collapse blueprint, the technology that will turn the financial crisis into a mechanism for total societal control. The collapse of the dollar and the rise of gold are merely symptoms. The disease is the loss of your freedom. The war banking pattern is designed to achieve one ultimate goal: to install the central bank digital currency, CBDC, as the new form of controlled money. This is the digital prison. The economic chaos created by the dollar collapse is the necessary precursor to the CBDC. They will present the CBDC not as a mechanism of control, but as the only safe, stable alternative to the failed fiat system. They will market it as instant, efficient, and fraud-proof. They lie. The CBDC is the final, irreversible loss of your autonomy. The CBDC eliminates cash. The elimination of cash is the single most necessary step for the digital prison to be fully implemented. Cash is private, untraceable, and beyond the control of the BIS and the central banks. Once cash is gone, your only option is the programmable digital currency. The true danger lies in its programmability. With the CBDC, your money is no longer a neutral medium of exchange. It becomes a weapon. They can enforce behavioral control. They can implement an expiration date on your funds, forcing you to spend or lose your money, thus eliminating savings and ensuring dependence. They can implement a carbon ration, programming your money to restrict purchases of high-energy goods, fuel, or specific foods based on your social or environmental compliance score. They can implement lockouts, instantly disabling your funds if the central authority disagrees with your political speech or actions. The BIS and BlackRock are already laying the digital groundwork for this. The technology is active. The collapse of the dollar is simply the final political crisis needed to justify the implementation of total digital control. The war banking pattern is not just about seizing wealth. It is about seizing your every decision. In the next part, we stop focusing on the problem and start focusing on the solution. We will identify the 3 physical assets that will break the grip of the digital prison. The greatest deception is the belief that financial freedom can be maintained using their digital tools. To survive the final phase of the war banking pattern, you must opt out of the system they control. You must hold assets that they cannot track, cannot program, and cannot seize. We identify the 3 critical survival assets. Asset 1. Physical gold, the ultimate insurance. Not paper gold, not ETFs. Only physical gold held in your personal possession outside of the banking system. Gold is the only asset that has been recognized as true money for 5,000 years. Gold has no counterparty risk. When the dollar collapses and the CBDC is introduced, gold will be the universally accepted medium of exchange between those who refuse the digital prison. The elite are accumulating it silently. You must acquire it openly. This is your generational insurance against central bank failure. Asset 2. Physical silver, the ultimate leverage. Silver is both monetary and industrial. Its price is heavily suppressed due to its dual nature. When the pattern breaks, the industrial demand for silver, solar, technology, medicine will guarantee a massive price spike that far outpaces gold. Silver is the poor man's gold, making it accessible for rapid accumulation now. It is essential for bartering in a post-collapse environment due to its smaller transaction size. Accumulate physical silver in smaller, recognizable weights. Asset 3. Productive land and water rights. This asset breaks the food control trap we discussed earlier. In the final phases of the collapse, control shifts from digital money to physical resources. Land that is not mortgaged, that has access to reliable water, and is capable of growing food is the ultimate asset. Land is untraceable, non-digital, and productive. It guarantees your physical autonomy against the rationing enforced by the CBDC. This is the final frontier of true independence. These 3 assets are the only physical tools that resist the seizure orchestrated by the hidden empire. They cannot be turned off by a switch. They cannot be programmed by Aladdin. And they cannot be seized by the BIS. Your compliance is voluntary if you hold these assets. In the next part, we will nail down the terrifying timeline, the specific dates and events that will trigger the final, irreversible collapse. The most urgent question is when. The war banking pattern provides an explicit, devastating timeline for the final phase of the collapse. The elite cannot control the exact day, but they control the necessary political and financial events leading up to the 2025 Liquidity Seizure. The final countdown is governed by 3 specific dates. Date 1. The Basel III Global Implementation, the Capital Squeeze. Basel III rules, dictated by the BIS, require banks globally to hold massive reserves of high-quality liquid assets, which severely restricts their ability to loan money. This global capital squeeze is designed to choke economic activity and collapse the debt market. This is the controlled ignition of the crisis. When the banks stop lending, the system stops breathing. Date 2. The BRICS Gold-Backed Trade Announcement. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are actively moving away from the US dollar for global trade. They are preparing to announce a new trade currency, potentially backed by a basket of commodities, including gold. This announcement is the official beginning of the dollar's final collapse. When global oil trade abandons the dollar, the petrodollar system collapses, causing hyperinflation in the US and triggering the immediate need for a new currency, the CBDC. Date 3. The US presidential election cycle, the political cover. The highest point of political uncertainty and social unrest always coincides with the final economic seizure. The elite use political division as the ultimate distraction. The chaos surrounding the election cycle is the perfect cover for the BIS and the central banks to execute the final technical phases of the seizure, blaming the economic collapse on political instability rather than their own engineered pattern. The war banking pattern confirms that the global system cannot sustain its current debt trajectory beyond 2025. The confluence of these three events, the capital squeeze, the de-dollarization signal, and the political cover, guarantees that the liquidity seizure will happen within the next 24 to 36 months. The time for preparation is over. The time for execution is now. In the final part, we summarize the ultimate truth and give the final, irreversible warning. You have seen the final truth. You have learned the rules of the devastating war banking pattern. You know that every collapse is deliberate, every conflict is orchestrated, and the entire goal is the centralized seizure of your wealth and your freedom. The elite are not competing, they are collaborating. The hidden empire, the BIS, Vanguard, and BlackRock are the architects of this final collapse. They are managing the destruction of the US dollar, suppressing the price of real money like gold and silver, and preparing the infrastructure for the programmable digital prison. The final warning is this: do not trust their digital solutions. The CBDC is the digital chain. Your digital compliance is their ultimate goal. When the banking system fails, and they offer the new stable digital coin, you must understand that you are trading your financial independence for guaranteed dependence. The time for action is now. If you have not moved a significant portion of your savings into physical, real assets, you are mathematically guaranteed to participate in the seizure. You must hold physical gold, physical silver, and untracked, debt-free productive land. These are the only instruments that guarantee your autonomy against the war banking pattern. They want you to be passive. They want you to be distracted by the media's lies. They want you to believe the crisis is random. But you know the blueprint. You know the timeline. You know the game. The collapse is not a theory. It is a scheduled event. This video has provided the full blueprint of the pattern. But the pattern reveals one more terrifying truth. The collapse is immediately followed by the great confiscation of private property. In our next video, we will reveal the secret US and global legislation that has already been prepared to justify the mass seizure of retirement funds, private gold, and bank accounts when the financial system fails. Do not miss the next video. The knowledge you hold is your only defense against the final act of the hidden empire. Share this video. Prepare your assets. The time is running out.